In this video, I'm going to try to explain in as simple as possible fashion how importing packages works. Because you're probably at this point familiar with this statement, import numpy as np. And once we have run that step, we now have access to powerful numpy functions such as the exponential function. But let's say that we want to write our own functions. And let's start by reminding ourselves what a function might look like. So let's say that we have one called, let's just call it fct, and it takes one input, x, and then it computes y equal to 2 times x plus 3, 4, whatever, and then it returns np, the exponential value of y. Okay, if we've done it like so, we can calculate, evaluate this function at 1, for example, or 0. Okay, but let's suppose that we want to move this into a separate file. That can be really useful as it can simplify our primary script. So let's create a new file, and let's not delete it immediately, but rename it, and let's call it helpers.py. You can see the logo changed because the ending changed. Alright, so now I have my helpers.py file open, and let's say that we want to put our function over there. So let's delete it and remove it from here and put it over here. The first thing to note is that if we do this, let's start by actually doing this. And let's reload the kernel here. And now we import numpy and we try to call our function and it says, I don't know what you're talking about. There's no such thing as the function. All right, then we can type import helpers. And now we have helpers. So we can see that helpers is a module. And if we type dot and tab, we can see that it actually has a function in it. So let's see if we can evaluate that function at 0.0. Now it's telling us name np not defined. This is confusing because we imported numpy here, but that's because numpy has not been imported inside of this function. So let's import numpy as np, and then let's go back here, and now we run it again and we get the same error. This is our second very important lesson. We can see that it's saying the error occurs on line 4, but actually numpy is called on line 5. And if we were to add even further lines, we can see that nothing here is happening. And actually if we add all kinds of errors here, this should throw additional errors. It's not helping, and that's because we need to reload everything, restart our kernel, and re-import the module. Now it's giving us this error. So let me just remove it and show you that just rerunning this step with import doesn't solve it. We have to restart our kernel, import again, and call the function. Now it works. One way around that is to load an external extension which is called aimport. And I always tend to forget what the command is for importing that, so I always have to remind myself. So I just copy it from some other notebook where I have it. All right. This is loading the extension auto reload and giving it the setting 2. This means that every time we run a cell in our notebook, it's going to reload that file. So now if I write in something that's wrong here, it's going to give an error because it's reloading every time that I run a cell in my notebook. So that was convenient. All right, let's navigate back here to my illustration. Okay. The other thing worth noting is that let's suppose that I have another file here that I want to call, let's call it lib. That's a dangerous one. Let's call it func.py. And in this one, we're going to also import numpy as np, and we're going to define another function. We're going to call it g, and also takes an input x, and it returns x plus 2. Okay. Seemingly, I'm in this folder, but if I type import func, I'm going to get an error because func is not in the same directory as I am currently in, so I can't import it. I have to make sure that my file is in the same directory that this notebook is running from. There are ways of importing stuff above the folders that you're currently in, and then there are ways of importing things below. For instance, let's say that we create a library here. Again, I think lib, let's call it mylib, and let's put func in there. Let's restart our kernel here, and now it can't find func, but if we type mylib.func, it's finding it just fine. Here's my helper, and func.g of 1. Whoops, mylib.func.g of 1. So that's how we call the function. This can be a little bit clunky to keep doing. So what we can do instead is we can type from mylib import func. Oops, and let's reset out our kernel so we make sure that we're actually rerunning things. Now it can't find mylib, but now we have func. And finally, let's do one final thing. Let's say that we don't want to write helpers everywhere. Let's just say import helpers as h. And then we restart. Now it cannot find helpers, but we have it available as h. And if we were to put in a second function here, which takes an input s and prints hello and then s, then h dot hello, and you can see that I pressed tab here, which auto completed it. Hello friend, hello father. Great. So that is how we import functions and import entire files full of functions, and how we can rename them for convenient access.